Hey guys, this is video number 2 of the post-trib pre-wrath position. And in the first video, we went over the clear statement, which was Matthew chapter 24, verses 29 through 31, where it says immediately after the tribulation, we see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with the sound of a trumpet, and he gathers together his elect, which is the rapture. And many people will look at that verse and say, well, that's in the book of Matthew, and that is to the Jews. He is only talking to the Jews. And I'm not sure if they mean that that's just the Jewish rapture or whose rapture that is. It's clearly a rapture. He's clearly taking his elect out of the earth. But they'll say that book is to the Jews. And I want to kind of prove that just simply is not true. Jesus is not just talking to the Jewish people. And I'm going to prove that with Mark chapter 13. There's 3 parallel passages that speak of the Olivet discourse, or when Jesus is preaching the sermon of the end times. And that's Matthew chapter 24, Mark 13, and Luke chapter 21. But go over to look at Mark chapter 13 and look at the last verse. After he says all that and he talks about the same exact things, you have the events of the tribulation, and verse 27 says, verse 26 says, then they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory, and then he shall send his angels and shall gather together his elect from the 4 winds, from the uttermost part of earth to the uttermost part of heaven. So there's your rapture. But look at the last verse in chapter 13 and verse 37. It says, and what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. So the important thing to notice is Jesus actually says who he's speaking to. And he says, what I say unto you, speaking to his disciples, I say unto all, watch. And this idea of an imminent rapture, or that the Lord can come back at any moment, is just simply not true, because he says there's events that need to take place first. And the events of the tribulation is one of them. In Luke chapter 21, where it says the same exact context, in verse 27, it says, and then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. But the next verse is very interesting. Verse 28 of chapter 21 of Luke says, and when these things begin to come to pass, then, so it says first, when you see these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. So the Bible's very clear that there's some things that we're to look for before we see the coming of the Lord. And he says, when you see these things, then look up, for your redemption draweth nigh. It doesn't make me look forward to the coming of the Lord any less. It just makes me see that there's events that must precede his coming. And Jesus tells that it's for everybody. And he says, when you see these things, look up, for your redemption draweth nigh. And I know I'm looking forward to that day.